Hello, and welcome to a special Project Spotlight episode of the Knit and Grace podcast. Hello, and welcome back if you are a returning viewer. If you are new here, my name is Mia, and I am the maker behind Knit and Grace. And today I'm bringing you a bonus episode of the podcast for the month. And this is going to be a Project Spotlight episode. So I don't think that I've necessarily done many of these or any of these in the past. Typically, if I'm spotlighting a particular project, it's usually in a making journal style. But because I took the month of February off from the podcast, I realized that I never properly introduced you to the item that I am currently wearing today. So I thought that I might as well go ahead and film a little episode for you all and sort of walk through this particular project and, kind of everything that I did with mine and get you all that information that I have not previously shared in the podcast. So the project that I'm talking about is the Directional Pullover by Aimee Sher, which is the project that I'm wearing here today. And of course, I will go ahead and insert some finished objects pictures for you all to review of the project as well, since I know it is a little difficult to see with me wearing it, especially being so close to the camera. But in terms of the project, it was featured as a finished object in my January podcast episode, if you would like to go back and see that. Although I didn't actually share very many details about the project itself because the project hadn't been released yet. And so that's something that I'm going to try to do a little bit more this year, is maybe if I finish a project before it's been released, kind of show you the finished item and then wear it in the next podcast once the project has actually been released and published by the designer, so that you all will have a little bit more ready access to the project as you're seeing me talk about it live. So with that long-winded introduction out of the way, I will go ahead and jump right in, and you will see me looking down. I do have notes in front of me to make sure that I don't forget anything, and I can get started. So first I will go over the pattern itself, and then I will go over the modifications that I made or the information that's specific to my finished garment. So as I mentioned, the pattern is the Directional Pullover by Aimee Sher. It has since been published. I believe it was released sometime in February or the end of January, beginning of February timeframe. So you all can get your hands on the pattern if you haven't already and knit it up for yourself. Also, Aimee provides very detailed pattern as well as schematic information within the patterns. And so I'll link both to their website as well as to Ravelry, so whichever one you prefer to use. There is a detailed lookbook that Aimee publishes for each of their patterns, so that you can take a look at the pattern and really figure out if it's going to work for you before purchasing the pattern, which I think is an amazing model to have as a knitwear designer, because not every pattern is going to suit everyone or be for everyone, or that kind of thing. And I know that it is always best to have as much information going into a pattern as possible when purchasing the pattern. And so I know that's why I watch a fellow YouTube podcast, and I know that's probably why you all watch some of these podcasts as well. So the fact that Aimee does this for every one of their pattern releases is absolutely amazing. So with regard to the pattern itself, it is a top-down drop shoulder construction. So it is worked in one piece from the top down. I believe, if I remember correctly, and I tested this pattern, so I started it back in like November, December timeframe. So some of the details are a little muddy, but I believe you begin with the actual front and then you pick up for the back and work the back pieces, and then you join in the round, work your body, you pick up your sleeves and knit your sleeves down. So that kind of traditional top down drop shoulder construction. The nice thing about this particular sweater is that, and I am kind of sitting on the back, so I probably shouldn't be doing that, is that it features a V-neck. So I will show you that here. And it is a slight V-neck, which I actually like. It is very close in, and it just comes down slightly, so that it's not like too low. I mean, I would like a lower V-neck for like a summer garment, but for a winter garment, I still want most of my neck covered, but it still gives you that like V-neck style. You could still layer it, but everything is still, you know, sort of nice and tight. Nothing feels like it's falling off of your shoulders, like you need to be messing with, you know, bra straps or anything like that if you do wear undergarments. I just think it's, you know, really nice, because it's also comes in nice and tight. It's also very easy to just layer a t-shirt underneath, because I know many of us just don't wear our knitwear next to skin, especially in the winter. And so it's very easy to just layer something underneath without having anything poke through. Today I don't have anything layered underneath just because I popped it on for the sake of this video, but typically I do have just a V-neck t-shirt that I layer underneath when I have worn this sweater. In terms of the pattern as well, so we talked about the construction. It also features an optional color work motif along the body and the sleeves, and that's actually where the pattern gets its name from, because it is a chevron motif, and so that's where the directional part of pullover comes from. And as I mentioned, it is V-neck, and as you can tell already just by me wearing it here and by the pictures that I showed you before, it is an oversized sort of sweatshirt look. So I'll actually go to the sleeves so that you can see that. The sleeves, you can see, are actually, there is some short row shaping in the sleeve cap, so it helps to make sure that everything just stays nice and rounded over your shoulders. And then the sleeve is worked straight. Again, if you're working the color work, you would work it, you know, anywhere on the sleeve that you would like, depending on the placement. And then it is very kind of quickly cinched in at the bottom with a nice tight rib. So it's giving you that traditional sort of sweatshirt sleeve, if you will, where it balloons out a little bit and then it comes in nice and tight at the cuffs, so you can very easily either push it up or you can fold it, or I opted on, you can do it like a fuller length. I like all my sweaters bracelet length, because then as I bend my elbows, everything, they nicely expose my wrists. So yeah, the sleeves are really amazing. As I mentioned, there is short row shaping in the sleeve caps. And then the pattern is, in terms of the pattern design itself, so it is originally designed in a woolen spun yarn. And let me actually pull up the yarn. Although Aimee is always very good about providing multiple yarn options as well, but the yarn originally used is Hinterland, the brand, their range line. And it is a worsted weight woolen spun yarn that is 50% wool, 50% alpaca. And Aimee has designed it in 2 colors. Additionally, in terms of the pattern itself, there are various modifications included in the pattern. So very sort of front and center, the modification that I made is omitting the color work. So you can choose to either have the color work in or out. You can also choose to change the placement of the color work within the garment, as well as choose to knit the color work band either wider or more narrow. And I guess I should include a picture of Aimee wearing their sweater as well, so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about with regard to the color work. So in the sample, the color work is kind of a medium thickness, and it is across the bottom of the body as well as the bottom of the sleeves, if I'm looking, yep, if I'm looking at the pictures correctly. And they're kind of parallel with each other, so more in line with each other, so it kind of creates like this continuous line. But you can, you know, sort of fuss with that placement a little bit. You can like move it up, you can move it down, depending if you need to lengthen, shorten, all that jazz. But additionally to that modification, which is kind of like the easiest of modifications, if you will, there is a bicep modification, which I actually took advantage of for the sweater. So you can make a full bicep adjustment. So that's for anyone who has a bigger bicep in terms of the proportions of what would normally be your upper bust measurements. And there is the modification of adding in bust darts, as with most of Aimee's patterns. And that is another modification that I took advantage of as well. In terms of the pattern layouts, you're going to, you know, if you are familiar with Aimee's patterns, you're going to see a very familiar layout across all of their patterns. If you're not familiar with Aimee's pattern layout, you can actually look at that sort of preview booklet or pattern booklet that they put out, so that you can kind of see the layout. But it's, you know, it's in that portrait layout, double columns, everything is nicely spaced, very nice font sizes, very clear font, and, you know, kind of just the schematics are in there, everything that you need are in there. One thing that I did like about this pattern that doesn't necessarily apply for me, but I know could apply for others, because, you know, depending on whatever pattern you're looking at, patterns can get a little lengthy in terms of the number of pages. With this particular pattern, they've moved the bust dart modification to the appendix of the pattern, as opposed to within the pattern itself. And I think that that just makes it nicer for folks that don't necessarily need bust darts. You know, there's still that that place indicated within the pattern saying if you need bust darts, this is where you would add them in, and then you would go to the appendix to add in your particular bust darts. As always, they walk you through how to calculate your bust darts, if you do need bust darts, how many inches of bust darts you need, and all of that within the pattern. But I did like that sort of layout change from with this pattern from my other patterns of theirs that I've purchased, more so for everyone else, because I obviously add in the bust darts. So to me, you know, it doesn't matter to have the bust darts within the pattern, but I think it makes a little bit more sense for folks that might not need those bust darts. So I think that is everything that I wanted to talk about with regard to the pattern itself. So I will go ahead and get into the specifics of my sweater that I knit. And so I'm pulling up my phone here just so that I have everything in front of me. So again, I'm not sure if I made this very clear at the beginning, but this was a test knit. So I did test knit this sweater for Aimee. And I worked on the sweater from November 9th through December 24th. So I bound off on Christmas Eve. In terms of sizing, I chose size D with a cup size number 2. So what that means is, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up the sizing information. if I can. I'm in the Rabbit app, so I'm having to toggle around. Here we go. So size D corresponds to an upper bust measurement of 40.75 inches or 102 centimeters. So most, if not all, of Aimee's patterns will refer to the upper bust measurement as opposed to the full bust measurement. And this is going to give you a garment with a finished bust of, I don't have that information readily available, but again, the pattern schematic page will be linked below so you can take a look at that. But in any case, the pattern size D corresponds to a 40.75 upper bust measurement, and my particular upper bust measurement is, depending on the day, between 40 and 41. So that's kind of where I went with that. The cup size number 2 is just a 2-inch bust start. And so in terms of the difference between the front and the back, there's already 2 inches built in. I have a 4-inch difference between my back and my front. And again, Aimee explains very clearly how to go ahead and calculate that information. And so therefore I need an additional 2 inches of fabric in the front to make sure that my hem is parallel all the way across, or all the way around, I should say. In terms of the needle, I did use the needle recommended in the pattern, I'm pretty sure. Yes. So I did use the needle that is recommended in the pattern, which is a US 8 or 5 millimeter needle as my main needle. I did use a US 6 for the tubular bind off and a US 7 or 4.5 millimeter needle for all of my ribbing as instructed in the pattern. In terms of the yarn usage, I went rogue. So when I saw Aimee post this test call, I immediately slid into their DM and I was like, I want to sign up for this test, but I don't want to use any type of spun yarn and I don't want to do color work. Can you still let me in? And they were like, of course, you can do it. We'll let you in. And so I went rogue and I used an unspun yarn for mine. So I used Knitand that I had in my stash in the color Gillingroa, which means gray yellow, I think, if I remember correctly. And so yeah, so I held Knitand double throughout the entire sweater in order to meet the gauge of the pattern, which is 17 stitches to 4 inches. In terms of yarn usage, I used just over 4 plates. So I used 406 grams of Gillingroa. And yeah, so let's go into the actual information. So again, I did size D with cup size 2. I did omit the decreases for the bicep to make a full bicep adjustment so that my sleeves are a little wider, and that was just based on the information that Aimee provided in the pattern. So based on the pattern schematic, Aimee lets you know, based on your size, this is the corresponding bicep that has been used, or the bicep width that or you know, yeah, I guess width, the bicep measurement that has been used, and this is how much ease you will get in the pattern for that bicep measurement. And so mine was, I think it was something like 15 and no, my bicep is not 15 inches. I think it was something like 13 inches and my bicep is like 14 inches or something like that. So I would have had less ease, and so therefore you can choose to either do less decreases or omit the decreases 100% in order to get the correct ease across the bicep. So to get the correct ease for the pattern across the bicep, I did completely omit the decreases. And so that's giving me a lot more breathing room in the bicep area. Additionally, as always, I think I've mentioned here on the podcast several times, I am 4'11.5", so I always have to make my regular lengthening adjustments, aka shortening adjustments. And so I knit the sleeves for 12.5 inches before wrist shaping and the body for 11 inches before the ribbing. And so, as always, my Ravelry project notes will be linked below. And if Ravelry is not accessible to you, and you should be able to figure out based on, I don't want to give away the pattern information, but based on the information that I'm providing you within the podcast today, and if you were to look at the schematic booklet, you should be able to figure out how I made those adjustments. So that is my modification. In terms of would I make the pattern again? 100%. I do actually plan on making it again. When making it again, I do think that next time, depending on the yarn that I choose also, I will likely not omit the sleeve decreases, so the bicep decreases, I should say. I probably won't omit them. With Newton, it still has a lot of structure. It's still, so I think that having, this extra fabric here is actually really great. It gives me a lot of room, super roomy. I can layer lots of stuff underneath. So I think it was the right decision for this one. I think if I go with a more flowy fabric, like even a worsted spun maybe would give you a little bit of a flowy fabric depending on the spin and depending on the yarn that you use. I would likely omit include the decreases if it's a flowier fabric. I think with the structured fabric, having that extra fabric definitely helps so that I don't feel suffocated in the underarms, but there's definitely plenty of room in the underarms that I could have included them and still been fine in this particular garment. So I think that is pretty much everything. Yeah, in terms of the finishings on the pattern are all done in a tubular bind off, since it does feature a 1x1 rib throughout in the neckband, which actually has this really nice central decrease here, so it gives you that nice crisp line. So you have your tubular bind off in your sleeves and also in your bottom hem. And so as always, I will include the link to my tubular bind off in unspun yarn tutorial that I have released on the channel for you all to review as well. So that is all that I have to share with you all on this wonderful pattern by Aimee Sher. Again, be sure to go check out the pattern. I will link to their website as well as to the Ravelry pattern page below, and I'll also link to my Ravelry project notes below as well. If there are any questions that I have not answered for you in this video or on my Ravelry project page, definitely feel free to leave them in the comments down below. But I hope that you liked this video and kind of this new little segment. I probably will pop these in here occasionally throughout time whenever I don't get to necessarily properly spotlight all of my projects. But I thought that, because I didn't give this one the proper information, and I do like to give you all of the information as to how I knit a garment so that you have that available to you. In the last time that I showed this project off, wanted to make sure that I provided that to you all. So yeah, please be sure to do all of the podcasty things. Visit the description down below for various ways you can support the channel. Of course, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon so you're notified every time I post a video. hit the like button, leave me a comment, do all the things. I definitely read all of the comments. I interact with pretty much all of the comments, and I love to hear what you're all working on always. So until my next video, please be sure to take care of yourselves, your loved ones, and each other, and I'll see you next time. Bye.